Good evening, everyone. Welcome. The time is 3 minutes to 8, and we are going to go live at 2 minutes past 8, as we do in each of these webinars. A big welcome to everyone. We've had such a huge response to today's webinar that, in fact, we are so oversubscribed. So if you do know people who are attempting to get on, our 1,000-person Zoom room will be completely full in the next minute or two. We are broadcasting live, as always, on the South African Jewish Report YouTube channel. So please, if you know of anyone who is unable to get into the Zoom room, who does ask you, please direct them to YouTube and let them search for the SA Jewish Report, and this will be broadcast, or is being broadcast live on that channel. So good evening to our guests. We're going to be going live at 2 minutes past 8. Peta Maunder, this is an interesting evening. I get to do the very easy ones. I've done whistleblowers and I've done game reserves in the weekend and game viewing, but the tough ones you get to do. I'm sorry.
I'm very happy to do this, Howard. This is what I get paid to do, isn't it? To ask tough questions.
Well, of course, Peter, I'm sure you'll deal with it yourself, but in fact, you were a media advisor to the chief rabbi for many, many years, and that's one of the reasons why he trusts you and why he's asked you this evening to host tonight's webinar, which in fact is done at the request of the chief rabbi. And for that, we must be very grateful and thankful that he's willing to come onto this platform and face a real journalist, a real editor who, although we all have a fantastic relationship with the chief rabbi, will not shy away from the real issues. And that's what gives you the credibility to host tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the faith that you all have in me. I hope not to let anybody down.
I just say the tough time that you give me, just go easy on the people tonight, please, Peta.
Yeah, and the chief rabbi well knows that I don't ever give him an easy time.
Danny Kaler, you are on controls tonight. A huge thank you once again for being on controls. Everyone has been WhatsApping me since we spoke about it on Thursday evening or Saturday evening. You had just gone for a COVID test so you could go do LASIK tomorrow. Did you pass your COVID test?
I did. It is of public interest now. So yes, I'm pleased to report back that I am negative. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. I think everyone should do it. Tick it off your to-do list. But yes, the COVID test center in Ampath, it's Ampath and Rosebank, 5 minutes of your time. Go ahead and do it. Yeah, and the results came back. Thank you very much.
So are you suggesting to Kenny he should walk across the corridor at Discovery and say, please pay for Danny's LASIK surgery?
Yes, in fact, I will. That is a great suggestion. Let me actually just type Kenny's details right now and submit that claim.
Well, Danny, a huge thank you this evening for doing this. We're going live in exactly 2 minutes' time. Our Zoom room of 1,000 people is completely full. We are also broadcasting on YouTube. So just once again, if anyone has requested how to get on, please send them the YouTube link that you probably have, or tell them to go onto YouTube to the SA Jewish Report, and they will find this live broadcast there. And of course, it will remain on YouTube, as all of our webinars remain on YouTube thereafter. So with that, the time is 2 minutes past 8. A huge welcome to everyone. We have a massive audience this evening. The Zoom room is full. The YouTube channel is filling up dramatically as well. But tonight is in fact the 60th webinar that the South African Jewish Report has hosted during the period of lockdown. So a huge welcome to all of our guests, but most importantly, a big welcome to our community and to those people around the world who will be watching us. We know a massive audience in the United States and Canada, places like Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, Kenya, Nigeria, Namibia, Zimbabwe. We have people who watch us in Israel, hundreds and hundreds of people who watch us in Israel. So it really is fantastic to broadcast through to an international audience and to a massive audience this evening. I'm handing over this evening to probably the most respected journalist and editor in South Africa. Peta Krost Maunder has been editing the Jewish Report for many years. And before that, she held positions. For example, she was producer of Carte Blanche. She is known as an unbelievably fair person, a brilliant editor, but someone who gets down to the nitty-gritty, to the actual crux of everything that we'll be discussing this evening. And that is why I give up my chair this evening to someone who is so much more qualified than myself. Before I do that, Let us just say that this is not just a dialogue between the people on the screen. We want to get through as many questions as possible. We will go on for at least 90 minutes, and if the community demands even more, but we want to get to your questions. So please, I want to remind you about the two buttons that you find at the bottom of your screen. The one button is the chat button. If you'd just like to comment, chat amongst yourselves, and we really encourage you to do that, please use the chat facility and the button that you see at the bottom of your screen. The button next to that says Q&A. Please, I beg you, participate in this evening's activities. Ask questions, pose your questions, things that are worrying you and things that are concerning you after a few weeks that have been really quite traumatic in our community. Please pose those questions and Peta will put them to the panelists on the panel. In addition to that, we have 4 polls where we'll be asking your opinion this evening, both at beginning and at the end of this broadcast. So please participate. For those people who are watching us on YouTube, we know we can't do panels on YouTube, but we're going to actually be posting the questions, and we're going to be asking you to, in fact, post the answers in the comment section on YouTube as well. One more piece of information about YouTube. Please, we are nearly at 1,000 subscribers. Please like and subscribe to our channel, because at 1,000 amazing things can happen, and we can notify people and appear on people's video screens as well. So if you are on YouTube, please just take 1 second and just press like and subscribe. We'd really be enormously grateful for that. So with no further ado, I pass my chair over to the best editor in South Africa. Peta Krost Maunder, this evening is yours.
Thank you very much, Howard, and thank you for the lovely, kind words you say about me. I know I'm not good. I know we all want answers, and apparently the Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Dovi Goldstein and Kenny Rabson, who are all with us tonight, also want to give them to us. They want to give us the answers. So let's waste no time. First of all, as Howard mentioned, I do have a relationship with the Chief Rabbi, as I used to consult to him. So I guess if he gives me a hard time in answering our questions, it's my own fault, because I coached him in how to deal with the media. But before we start, can I ask that we all, including the public, keep your questions short and sharp, and to our guests, please keep the answers the same. We can't get into rambling or long-winded answers, so you'll excuse me if I cut you short, if that happens. As I go through the questions, I'd like you all to know that most of these questions actually come from the community. So it's not my brilliance, it's the brilliance of the community speaking. Let's get started with, I guess, what some would call the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, the rabbinical meeting last Thursday, at which the Chief Rabbi was recorded saying action needed to be taken to voice his and the rabbi's protest over how Kathy Kaler and Chai FM dealt with the kashrut issue. He called it a disgrace. This was then aired on Chai FM and went viral on social media. I admit, I was shocked when I heard the clip, as it wasn't, I guess, the behavior that I and others expect from the Chief Rabbi. Many people in the community were extraordinarily angry. Chief Rabbi, do you regret having said what you said?
I want to say something, Peta, that the essence of integrity and decency and honesty is being the same person as you are out there in the world as you are inside. In my opinion, there should be no discrepancy between what one says privately and what one says publicly. What I was saying in that meeting was 100% legitimate, and that is, it's important to have a debate as a community. If there's a feeling that a platform, a media platform, is not being used with ethics and with balance, then that's worthy of a debate, and it can be my own private opinion. And I want to just take a chance to compliment the South African Jewish Report and contrast that, in my opinion, with the way that Chai FM handled it. And I said that even to the rabbis in the meeting with the rabbis. And by the way, it wasn't a secret meeting. I sent
I'm going to stop you because you're not answering my question. Do you regret what you said?
No, I do not. And I want to make this clear. And that's why I'm saying integrity is about saying what you say privately and publicly. It's not that all of a sudden it was recorded and so now I'm embarrassed about what I said. No, not at all. I was saying something totally legitimate. And I said to the rabbis, this is not about smothering a public debate. I actually said in that meeting, which seems that part of the clip was not recorded and distributed. I said in the meeting, and it wasn't a secret meeting, it was sent out to 157 rabbis, and I meet the rabbis each and every single week, as we have done throughout COVID. And I said to the rabbis there, media must give a chance to air all the issues. That's why I was the one who suggested tonight's webinar. I said to Howard, let's have this webinar because I want that out there. And so what I said to the rabbis, and so I want to just confirm and clarify this, what I was really saying is that we need to have a debate about the objectivity and balance and professionalism of the media platforms in this community. I have felt that Chai FM throughout has been biased and unprofessional. I said that to the rabbis. I would say that publicly. But the word that I used there was a Hebrew word called micha'ah, which means sorry, Peta.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you because I know that a lot of people have heard you speak about this before. But the question is, okay, there's a couple of questions, but how do you feel about media being silenced or censured when unpleasant or uncomfortable issues are addressed? Because that's sort of what you're saying.
No. God forbid. I said in the meeting, and the rabbis who were there can vouch for it. I said in the meeting, this must be debated openly. And I actually said, the South African Jewish Report has reported this matter both sides and has given an opportunity to both sides of this debate to be aired. And I said, that's very important. Yes. But what we need from our media platforms is objectivity, professionalism, and non-bias. You can't have it when people have a personal agenda. And that was, I was saying, that was my personal opinion. And I said, I feel, and it was raised by a number of the rabbis, and I said, I feel that we need to think about how we can make our voices heard to protest the bias of Chai FM. I stand 100% by that. The problem was this, Kathy mistranslated the word micha.
I understand that.
I have to clarify this because I'm sorry, Peta, and this, I tell you, and I will be much more disciplined as we go on, but I have to say this at the outset because Kathy Kaler published on Chai FM and then subsequently on Facebook an accusation that I have threatened her physically. That's what she's thought. It's beyond the pale, absurd, and bizarre. And I have to put on record here, it was based on a mistranslation of the word micha'ah, which may sound frightening to people when you hear that word. But when you eavesdrop on a meeting that you weren't invited to, there's a Hebrew word which the rabbis all know to mean objection, a verbal objection. That is all. We're talking about freedom of speech. Look, I'm devastated and sad that any person should feel hurt by anything that I've said. And that's something which is terrible. But it was a mistranslation. She now knows the correct translation. And I challenged her on the radio this morning to clarify that. And the reason I'm being so passionate about it is because integrity is everything. And I cannot have an accusation like that stand unchallenged.
I totally accept that. And I think that this is something that the two of you need to address. However, the point that the public make was that, is this the kind of the way that I guess you were heard to be, what you were heard, and the clip went viral, was people were shocked that this came from you. As the spiritual leader.
All I said, they were shocked because of the way that Kathy framed it. But if you listen carefully to what I said, I suggested that we form a subcommittee of rabbis in order to discuss how to make our voices heard. That is legitimate. That is legitimate part of public debate. Let me give you an example. In Manchester, when there was a terrible stadium collapse, the Daily Post in Manchester was covered the story in a way that the community felt was unfair. They voiced their protest. Media also has to be part of the discussion. You can never, God forbid, intimidate, but you have to have a way of saying, I actually think your coverage is biased. If you can't say that, is the media the only person you cannot have a debate with?
I agree that you're entitled to your opinion and to address it. It was just the people, the community was upset with how it was done. But let's move along, because I think that this...
I just have to say this final point, and you know me, I have been a supporter of the work, your work as an editor, and the South African Jewish Report.
I don't want to make this about Kathy versus me. This is not what this is about.
But I'm just saying, but the point is why it goes to the heart of the matter. Even when the South African Jewish Report has covered things that I've been uncomfortable with, I've supported and participated in the debate. What we need as a community is professional journalism. We need a robust, professional, free press. But the press being free comes with responsibility of integrity and balance. That's all I was saying.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and let's get on with the talking about the cost of the Hechsher. There've been 2 weeks of allegations and complaints that have been thrown around, all of it around the cost of getting and maintaining the kashrut hechsher. Most of the complaints, many of which were aired on Chai FM, were from smaller manufacturers and producers. They speak of huge increases in the last 2 years from already high fees and a baseline of 32,000 Rand a year. That's before any of the costs. Please perhaps this is Kenny, can you unpack this for us? Just explain why the fees are so high.
Sure. Peta, firstly, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to Howard as well, and obviously the entire community and everybody listening. I think a couple of years ago, the truth is that the finances of the UOS were in disarray. The model that was used to determine the price of a hechsher was pretty erratic in terms of who paid what. And what we said at the time is that we needed an objective, if you call it a mathematical algorithm, that looks at how many products have to be certified in any company, how many venues or factories have to be visited, and the obviously the bigger the amount of supervision required, the more the price would increase as per that algorithm. Majority of the manufactured products in South Africa are actually manufactured, of course, for the whole population in South Africa. So, for example, if you took a box of Kellogg's cereal, which is manufactured for everyone in South Africa, the cost of that hechsher on any box is not even a cent, not a cent. So therefore, the consumer, for products that are being produced for the whole community, the consumer is actually not paying anything for that hechsher. That makes up the majority of the revenue that comes in for hechshers. So actually, instead of raising money from the Jewish community to pay for kashrut, majority of the money is coming from the medium to large corporates in South Africa who are funding, in fact, most of the costs of the UOS. In fact, the revenue raised from that covers the entire payroll, pretty much, of the UOS. I think in terms of the model, the opportunity for us to look at, which has come up over the last 2 weeks, is those smaller companies. So as soon as there is a manufacturer that is making something specifically for the Jewish community, where the volumes will be dramatically lower, obviously that will translate into an extra cost for the consumer. We're committed to review the pricing model now, and we were setting up an ombudsman to actually do that. I'm proud to say that I lasted 2.5 days in that role. I think less time than Des van Rooyen.
It's a front page lead in the newspaper.
Front page, everything for 2.5 days. But the truth is the public wants an independent person there, and we'll sort that out. I mean, I totally support that. So we're going to look at the smaller suppliers and really look at what is the cost, what is the basic cost for us to do the supervision, and then adjust it appropriately. And that really is something we're going to be doing now in the next couple of weeks. We'll have it resolved, very quickly, and hopefully that will take away the noise. We will still set up an ombudsman, an independent person, that if someone is unhappy with the outcome of that, well, then they are free to, to engage with us. I think it's important to say the mission, and I can't talk about anything that's happened in the past, Peta, but what I can say is our mission is not to take away a hechsher because someone can't afford the price of it. That's not what we're trying to do. We will take away a hechsher if there's non-compliance with kashrut, with halacha. And that was actually, unfortunately, where this whole thing arose. I'm not going to go there at all.
There's no point.
But I think that's our commitment to the audience, that we will review the model now and see just how to make if I can call it the smaller suppliers who are producing purely for the Jewish community. Volumes, as I say, will be dramatically lower, and therefore cost per unit is higher. So there's a minimal cost that unfortunately will come through, and we've got to try and minimize that as much as we can.
So Kenny, are you saying that the base number, the base figure of 32,000 is not going to be that for the smaller guy? Because I mean, I think this whole crisis came from the smaller guy who was having to pay exorbitant prices.
Peta, I think what I'm saying is that we'll actually look at how many products that supplier has. For example, let's say it's one very basic product.
Yeah.
I think we can reduce that 32,000 dramatically.
Like
right?
a sauce, for example.
Yeah, like a sauce, right? If it's more complex and multiple pieces of work need to be done by food technologists and all the like, well, then we'll see what the input costs of that are. But I think it's so important to point out that this isn't it's a non-profit organization. So we're not looking to make profits or not losses either, actually, but we are looking to provide a good level of kashrut to the community. My view, which is not answering your question, it's a different point, but I really do think amongst all the noise, we can be very proud with over 45,000 kosher products, which you won't find, I can tell you, in most parts of the world outside the US and Israel.
Yeah. So Kenny, and I mean, is this because of the crisis that happened in the last few weeks? Did you go back to the drawing board and what were your thoughts? What was the discussion around this?
Sure. Look, the questions were raised over the last 2 weeks. As I say, it started off with a case that wasn't a cost issue, although it was portrayed as a cost issue. You all know, everyone listening must know it was a kashrut non-compliance issue.
But it was the beginning.
But post that, many other issues came out in the public domain. I think, listen, we're accountable to the community. Our aim is actually to resolve the issues. So we're not going to hide from those. We're going to, we want to get all of those people to come forward and we'll resolve it with them. Our aim is not to put them out of business. Okay, but it's also not to make, a lot of money. We're trying to cover our costs.
So you are committed. You're saying on air that you're committed to helping the smaller guy who's making food specifically for the Jewish community.
Absolutely, Pet. As I say, that doesn't mean, and I don't want your listeners to interpret that means they're getting something for free. Yes. What it means is there are costs that the Kosher Department, inspectors, everyone there are costs, and those costs will have to be borne. But let's see if we can get it to a level that's palatable for everybody.
Okay.
Peter, if I may, I just want to, if I may just add something there, and I think what Kenny said, is absolutely vital, that we are listening and learning from this experience over the last 2 weeks, and we're hearing what the community says. But the Honeyfields case is very instructive in the sense that the price that they were charged was 17,000 Rand a year, which is less than 1,500 Rand a month. They have 88 products. And that means that you need a food technologist, you need a data manager, you need factory inspectors. That means if you divide that, we're talking about all of that for less than 1,400 Rand a month. And even at the higher fee, which was the initial proposal, you're talking about 42 Rand per product per month. And you're talking about a company that has a turnover of millions, and you're asking for less than 1,500 Rand a month to certify and take responsibility for the kashrut of 88 products and all of their ingredients. So I think in a certain sense, when I've told people that, they have a sense, my goodness, was that the case? I'm glad we had this learning experience over the last 2 weeks, but I think actually Honeyfields is not a good example of it, because actually that price, I mean, it's way below the cost of even what it costs us to be able to do that.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if it's an exorbitant amount for a company and it's squeezing the bottom line, then it's an issue. And the important thing, what I'm getting from this is that you all heard, the complaints, which I think is a good place to start.
Absolutely.
And I guess, I think that crises are a terrible thing in any community, but clearly it seems that they seem to lead to good things. Since the Standard Peat debacle, the UOS came up with the scientific pricing model. Can you just explain a little bit more about how it works? Or is it...
Is this for the manufactured goods, what I've been talking about, model? I think, Rabbi Dovi, do you want to explain the components, given it's obviously something you administer every day?
Sure, thank you. Can I just frame one thing before Rabbi Dovi comes in there, just to frame, Peta, for all of the viewers tonight. There are two separate divisions in the Kosher Department. The one division deals with the food service establishments. That's the butcheries, bakeries, all of that, which actually don't follow this model, because there it's a completely subsidized model. It's one which the UOS just covers costs in terms of the administration of the inspectors on the ground, because we understand these small businesses that only serve the Jewish community, like the butcheries and the bakeries and the caterers and all of these, that they need to be supported. So the pricing model that Rabbi Dovi is going to explain is the pricing model that is for corporate South Africa, who are the food companies, who are not producing food only for the kosher consumer. They are producing food for 60 million South Africans. And they want the hechsher, that certification, because it's good for their businesses. So we are in an arm's length transaction with them, because we're offering them something of value, because that hechsher brings them buyers, not only from the Jewish community, the Muslim community, vegans, vegetarians, even parts of the Christian community. So it's a value proposition for them. And then the formula is to make sure that it's a fair proposition to them at the same time, in terms both they're getting both value and then the services provided. So I just wanted to frame that.
It also covers the local producers whose the majority of the work they do is for the community. So not the bakers and the butchers, but producers and manufacturers. That's correct?
Yeah, so that is correct, Peta. And I think just to elaborate on that, so all our food services, which we have over 50 of them here in the local area that supply predominantly to the Jewish and kosher market, have a completely different model. We are talking here again about our 600 manufacturers, the bulk of which are medium to large corporates here in South Africa. The pricing model is worked out in a very scientific and transparent way. And effectively, the way the pricing model works is that every factory that is certified has a base rate of 32,000 odd rand. Then that includes one inspection, because the minimum amount of inspections that any plant needs, any factory needs, no matter how simple the product and the production is, it needs at least one inspection per year. That is the international standard. Depending on the complexity of that particular facility, for example, do they have milk and dairy? Milk and parav? Do they have kosher and non-kosher lines? It could mean that any factory needs up to 12 or more inspections a year, and every inspection is charged out separately. The next thing we look at is how many products is that factory certifying. And why that's so important, as was explained a little bit earlier, is that a product may contain 20 or more ingredients, and every one of those ingredients needs to be analyzed. Their certificates need to be checked. Are the certificates expired from other places in the world? We get products from Brazil, we get products from China and everywhere else in the world. And that goes through a very serious process that every single ingredient is checked. The next thing we take into account with our pricing model is the geographical location of each and every factory, because obviously for us to travel to those factories, requires an extra cost. So this scientific model that we have produced applies to all manufacturers, once again, not to food services that are only providing for the niche Jewish community here in South Africa.
Fair enough. Can we take a poll quickly? Just take a short break to see how people out there are feeling. Danny, can you put up the first poll? So I'm going to read it because I'm not sure that the people on YouTube can read this. How do you feel about the issues of the last few weeks? You can vote for more than one answer. First one, we should not air our dirty laundry in public. If we don't address these issues in public, nothing will change. Third one, I think this is a storm in a teacup. And the fourth one is these are important issues we need to resolve. We've got a minute still to go. And before we see what people think. Thank you very much for that, Dovi. I found that very helpful. Okay, are the polls done yet?
So, Peta, we've got about 40 seconds left on this poll.
Carry on with another question.
Yeah, maybe can I pose some? There are about 60 questions who've come in.
Howard, can I tackle it if you don't mind?
Sure, thank you.
Okay. One of the things that, so there are a lot of people coming in, and one of the big questions that people are asking, and I think this is a whole webinar on its own, is the prices of meat. And why, one of the big questions is why is kosher chicken in Cape Town cheaper than it is in Johannesburg?
Peter, I don't know, should I kick off and Rabbi Dovi, you can add in. So Peter, I mean, I can't talk about Cape Town, and I will let others talk about that. I mean, what I can tell you is from the US perspective that the revenue that we get for kosher food services is 7.7 million rand, and the actual expenses are 7.8 million rand. So it runs pretty much a very small loss of 100,000 rand, right? If you take the actual costs that we have of what is required for the shchita process, which is the person who does the slaughter, the bodkim inspector thing, etc. If you take those costs out of our payroll and all of the costs associated with them and divide that by the number of units slaughtered, right? How many cows, sheep, chickens, etc. are slaughtered. Now, you're not going to believe this, and that's what's crucial. I put it out there to you. The actual cost of shchita itself, right, is between 4.30 and 4.60 a kilogram of, depending if it's beef or chicken.
Okay, sure.
Right. So the actual cost, so we don't make a profit in shchita at all, in food services. We run largely break even, as I say, it's a tiny loss, but let's call that break even, right? And the translation into the price of a kilogram of beef is under 5 rand, right? So if 4 people are eating that kilogram of beef, our cost translates into 1.25 rand per person eating that meal, if that puts it in perspective for you.
But why would it be different in Johannesburg and Cape Town, though? Surely it's the same.
I can talk to that.
Yeah, surely it should be the same because you would ostensibly be paying the same prices.
So what's interesting, Peta, is actually in Cape Town, and I think we all know and feel the burden of buying kosher food. And it's one of the things that, you know, when we buy from a niche establishment, which is a kosher establishment, and we buy kosher meat and chicken, I think we all feel that pain and that expense. But I think what's very important to understand, firstly, just on the Cape Town issue, is that Cape Town gets the vast majority of its chickens from the abattoirs here in Johannesburg. They have a very, very small shchita of chickens in Cape Town, which are for free range, which are significantly more expensive. There was a time a few years ago where kosher meat in Cape Town was slightly cheaper than in Johannesburg. However, that was not a situation that could continue. And if you look today at the prices of meat and chicken in Cape Town, you'll find that they very much are on par.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I'm going to share the results.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted Rabbi Dovi to share, when you say the 5 Rand per kilo, Rabbi Dovi, just explain what is the amount per kilo, so you can see actually the percentage that it's in fact adding on, because I think it's very instructive, because it's actually showing that the shchita fees, which we charge the abattoirs, and is actually a very small percentage of the overall cost. And then the UOS has actually nothing further to do with the price. And I think this is a very important thing to mention in the public space. The prices, it's a free market. So the prices are set by the butcheries. We just are involved in charging a fee, which is the slaughtering fee, which actually makes up a very small percentage, which Rabbi Dovi can give you the full percentages, but the price is not set by the UOS. And that's so important. It's a total free market. If someone wants to open up a kosher butchery tomorrow, if you can meet the kosher requirements, you'll get a license. If you want to open up an abattoir tomorrow and you can meet the kosher requirements, we'll supply you with shoftim. So anyone who feels that they can bring prices down, then through the free market, that it can certainly be done.
Thank you.
Can I just share the results? So it's very clear that the community believe that these are important issues we need to resolve. 82% believe that. 62% said if we don't address these issues in public, nothing will change. So that becomes very clear where what we all feel. Can I take us to the next issue? And that is people are talking about getting hechsher. I think you say hechsherim. My Hebrew could be corrected. And some of these producers and manufacturers are speaking about that. Now, and I understand that the Beth Din and the UOS are against this. Why are you against this? And what is the problem with South African companies getting international hechshers?
Should I give an answer? I mean, I think, I don't think we have a problem, Peta, with that at all. What I would say to you is the following, and I think it's an important point to make. The South African community, in my view, is totally unique. It's a very special community. It's actually managed with all the different rabbonim from different backgrounds who all get on incredibly well. It's been very united under a single hechsher, and it's actually worked incredibly well. I personally feel we have something incredibly strong to be proud of. And it's not just from Kashrut, it's every part of our community, from the schools to the fact that we have over 150 rabbis in this town is a huge Kiddush Hashem. It's something really to be very proud of. My view is that people will jump to do something based on not resolving some of these issues. They are really so simple to resolve. And I know they might sound complex, and it's been going on this for 2 weeks, and maybe that's been the fault of the UOS, which I apologize for. We should have actually responded quicker, to be honest. Maybe we've been too silent on it. But it's really easy to resolve. I don't believe dollar-based costs are going to be dramatically cheaper than in South Africa. I still think it creates all the issues, and maybe they will, I don't even know. But I still think it creates, it takes what previous UOS committees, what dayanim over decades, what rabbis over decades, what this community and suppliers over decades have built. It takes it and it starts destroying it brick by brick. And in my view, once we go down that road, you will see many aspects of South African Jewry start to fragment. And I think what's very special will start to dissipate. So I don't think we're not again.
Why is that? Because in other countries, they have a couple of Beth Dins, they have, a couple of hechshers. I mean, why is it that will happen here?
Peta, it's so interesting. People don't hold by the various hechshers. This one won't eat that hechsher, the next person won't eat there. This restaurant's a problem, that product's a problem. That's the world we're going to if people do this. So I'm talking, I guess, more from a philosophical point of view. It's, to support something like that, I think, is kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater instead of resolving some of these issues. I can't believe we can't arrive at a financial solution that is as competitive as anyone could get overseas for our product. So I understand people almost having this reaction, and maybe if I was a manufacturer, I might even have the same kind of instinctive approach, but I don't believe it's the way to resolve this. I really believe this can be resolved quite easily.
Okay.
And Peta, if I could just add to that, because I think this is a very important point that you've raised here for the community. You know, a number of years ago, there actually was a competing hechsher and shchita in South Africa, and you had a situation where you would have some homes saying, I won't eat in your home. You have parents and children separated by it, and you have this kind of fragmentation all over the Jewish world. And another thing is this, the South African Beth Din has got a global reputation. So what happens is, if the kashrut fragments, the Beth Din fragments, that means over here, if for example, the Israeli chief rabbinate wants to know about a conversion, if it comes from the South African Beth Din, they accept our conversions. If they want to know about kosher, they accept our hechsher. If they want to know about a marriage authorization or proof of Jewishness, they do, because they know there's a cohesive Beth Din under an organized community. When that starts to fragment, then you say you're converted by this Beth Din, but this Beth Din doesn't recognize that conversion. So then the two families come to get married, and then one side doesn't accept the other. You end up with total chaos in religious life in that way. But I think the point that Kenny makes is so important. We can't just say, as the UOS and as the Kosher Department, support us because we need one hechsher. We have to meet the expectations and the needs of the community to make ourselves deserving of it. But I think as a South African Jewish community, we have something so precious in this. And we're almost unique in the world with that. And it's something that we should be proud of and work to fix. I think Kenny made the point so well. If there are problems, let's fix those problems together.
Well, I think that's great. Can I move on to, can I move on to the issue of Kenny, who clearly could have been a very good ombudsman. But I hear, I mean, we were very aware after the story went out last week of the huge outcry from the community about the fact that as a board member of the UOS, Kenny was the wrong person to be an ombudsman. And a lot of the people on the questions and answers are saying the same thing. Many of them are not aware that Kenny is no longer going to be an ombudsman. But so just explain what happened and why, and who the new ombudsman is going to be.
Peta, I think the mistake we made was we used the term ombudsman, which has its own kind of connotation and gravitas to it. We used it because of the gravitas that it implies. So the word ombudsman, it's used today in financial services. There's an ombudsman in banking, there's an ombudsman, and typically these are retired judges who are arbitrating a particular complaint according to a legal contract. In this case, we weren't doing that at all. What we were just doing is sitting down with the manufacturer saying, okay, let's just review the price that you're concerned about. And we thought that with the commercial experience that I had, it would be very easy to literally sit down with these people, wrap it up, which I still actually believe is very easy to do. But I think the reality is we've seen that, whilst for decades, no one asked a question of the UOS. No one was ever worried about it, but you can see the world has changed. There's a new world of transparency. And therefore, the public's view that it's not independent enough, we totally respect it. I have no issue with it whatsoever. Given kind of these comments really came up in the last sort of 24, 48 hours, because it was only published on Friday, Thursday, and comments came sort of over the weekend. we took a decision as a board that it's certainly not an issue worth even debating, and let's get someone independent. So we're in the process of doing that. We haven't found the person. We will do it within the next couple of days, because it is so crucial to us that this process starts. We actually want those people that have got their issues. If we can wrap it all up in 2 or 3 weeks, those complaints, and find a new price for those people, I really think the noise will dissipate dramatically, and we will have done a service to each other by doing that.
So you've heard the community's feelings and call for an independent ombudsman. How are you as a board going to ensure that the person who is selected is going to be 100% independent?
Peta, it's a good question. I mean, I think that's why we have actually been debating people over the last 24 hours. And every single one of them, we're sort of interrogating ourselves. Is there a level of independence? Can that person be tied to something else that's related to the UOS or something else, etc.? So each one of those people, I guess, requires sort of a vetting to make sure that when we have a name, people are comfortable. So that is the process that we're following. We were trying to actually complete it for tonight, and we realized that just making one mistake and getting missing something could just derail the whole thing, and that's not the objective. The objective is to resolve this properly.
Yeah. I'm going to just go back a little bit, because I'm hoping that this will be addressed along the way. But in a lot of the emails I got today, and also in our Q&As, people have been very, there are a lot of allegations that the Kosher Department are difficult to deal with, and they take a hell of a long time to deal with people's issues that are directly related to the amount of money, their income, can I say. And I'm being kind, because you can just imagine the way that these things are being described. So can I say, Rabbi Dovi, because your name keeps coming up in here, these things have happened, people have got angry. How have they been addressed, and how will they be addressed going forward? Because, as in the Jewish report, we're as good as our last story. If people see you as being difficult to deal with, it makes them, want to deal with someone else or go elsewhere. And we want to avoid that. So how?
So we've also heard that, Peta, and we take cognizance and are learning also from the situation. And, we are committing ourselves to much tighter timeframes to get back to people, where we are now working toward a 24-hour turnaround time. We have community members contacting us constantly, and rightfully so, for answers about products, and is this kosher or isn't it, or is another hechsher from somewhere acceptable or isn't it, etc. And we have over 650 companies, if you take manufacturers and food services, and we are hearing that from our community, and we are taking action to ensure that we can get back to people within a reasonable time frame and be able to address the concerns that people are bringing, and making sure to offer the very best possible service that we can.
You're aware that this is being recorded.
Now, Peta, can I add something? I mean, in fact, we were on a call today, myself and Rabbi Dovi, talking about this very issue, because we know it's an issue that's being voiced out there, that the customer service is just not good enough.
Yes.
I think Rabbi Dovi has done such a brilliant job that unfortunately he's burying himself with work. What's happened is we've got 154 new companies over 3 years that have actually taken the hechsher, which is remarkable, the number of new products. But as he does that, the emails are just like smashing his computer every day. So we have to very quickly put someone in place to assist Rabbi Dovi, to manage it, to farm out all the various emails to the right place in the organization, and
Yes.
to make sure that we can get those service levels better. I mean, we know we're a service industry, and we know there's service failure that has happened, but we've got to turn that around. I mean, how quickly we'll get to a 24-hour turnaround, I don't know. I mean, I think we've got to get the person in place, put the processes in place in terms of process, a bit of process re-engineering. Obviously, to get a 24-hour turnaround from Dayanim on a complicated matter won't necessarily happen. But on the other hand, I think there are ways of dealing with it. Acknowledge the person's email, tell them we've seen the email, we are thinking about this case, how to resolve it for you, etc. So that's what we're going to do. I mean, we know it's a bugbear in the community, and we know as a service industry, it's something we have to address urgently.
Fair enough. I mean, one of the other questions that keeps coming up, Rabbi Dovi, is the fact that while you have a full-time job running the Kashrut department, that you're also a rabbi of your own shul, and people are saying, how can somebody be in two places at one time, basically? How can you have two jobs and do them both properly?
I think that's a great question, Peta, which I've had to really confront over the last few years. But if you look throughout the world, and in fact in our organization as well, we are all community people. We serve the community, and we are dedicated to the community. Yeah. And that being said, the rabbis in my department, as well as around the world, it's very usual that a community rabbi, between his 9 to 5 is either a teacher or is doing some other work, either in the community or out of the community. I've chosen to remain within the community, and if I can stand up and assist the community during my 9 to 5, let's call it, so that's something which I have been able to juggle over the last few years, and it's something I'm committed to, both my shul, which is very dear to me, and also to the UOS, which is absolutely a calling.
Okay. I mean, I can't imagine how you managed to do that, both jobs. But perhaps that is something that needs to be reconsidered. Can I just go to another poll about kosher prices? Danny, can you put up the other poll?
Peta may. Oh, okay. I wanted just to add.
When the poll goes up, you can respond. Okay, let me just read it, just in case there are people who can't see it. About keeping kosher. I don't want to keep kosher. That's the first one. I do keep kosher, but the costs are making me think about not keeping kosher anymore. Number 3, I keep kosher. The costs are crazy, but I have no choice. And finally, I'm happy with kosher in SA the way it is. Okay, Chief?
Okay, I wanted to say something else, but I wanted to talk about the poll now that you put up that poll, because I tell you what I think is an important thing about understanding that question, and I'm not trying to influence the vote in any way. People must vote freely as they wish. It's a free democracy. But what I think is important, people say the costs of kosher, and one has to say, firstly, food products which have the hechsher are the same price whether you're kosher or you're not. The extra cost of kosher is the extra price for kosher chicken and meat. And we've discussed that problem and how difficult it is, because there are small volumes and a high cost per unit price because you've got shochtim and all of those kinds of things. And it's actually, and I wanted to make this point, it is a global problem. In Australia, in the UK, in the United States, you will find that the cost of kosher meat and chicken is significantly higher than that of non-kosher. So it's not like, well, in the rest of the world, kosher meat and chicken is on a par with the non-kosher, and South Africa is somehow the exception to the rule. So I also think in explaining that question, it is about that, because all of the rest of the food package is something which is actually the general basket of goods.
Okay. Okay, well, that's so the results here are quite interesting. 54% of the people say, I keep kosher, the costs are crazy, but I have no choice. 20% say, I do keep kosher, but the costs are making me think about not keeping kosher anymore. I think that's enough said. So yeah. I mean, I know personally of people who have given up eating meat and have become vegetarian just because the cost of meat is so expensive. And I guess that there's
And if I may also say, in my opinion, one of the biggest crises facing our South African Jewish community is the cost of living for middle-class families in our community. Because in a certain sense, as a community, we've taken care of those who need welfare. The amazing work of the Chevra Kadisha is quite remarkable, and other welfare initiatives. But the middle class, with high costs of private schooling and high costs of medical aid, Kenny, and high costs of all of the different parts of it, and food and kosher food is part of it. But I think it's part of a broader problem that there's a financial crisis and COVID, and that's why it's something that we have to work on as a community. It was one of the reasons that I got so involved in the establishment of the Gesher Fund, because I feel that we need to.
I'm gonna have to stop you because we got too much to deal with, and we're going slightly off track. But you're right. You're 100% right, and I think I'm going to take us to the money trail. Kenny, what is the income of the UOS? I'm guessing that you're sitting there with the financials in front of you.
Peta, not all of the financials. I mean, I've got some of them. The total revenue is 31.9 million rand over our 2019 reporting period. So that's 31.9 million rand of revenue. 29.4 million of it, so that's 94.3% of that revenue comes in from kashrut. Now, the important thing, what we are trying to achieve in the UOS is that if you think about what is the product we sell a hersha. That is the beauty that we're able to get most of corporate South Africa actually funding a lot of the cost of kashrut. The change in the pricing model, and that whilst it might have caused a bit of noise for the smaller manufacturers, which I've said you will resolve, it's been instrumental in the way forward for the revenue of the business from a couple of aspects. For example, people know that they used to pay a UOS Simcha fee of 12 Rand per member attending a Simcha, right? That we've removed, right? It's gone.
When? Because we didn't know about that. Since when? I know the chief mentioned it on Sunday, but...
So actually the intention was to remove it in March, but ironically what happened was COVID came at the same time. So no functions actually happened. So there was no revenue even coming in. And as you know, most functions are not really happening at full scale even at the moment. So that is gone, and which I think is a positive from raising more money from the hersha. The second thing we've been able to stop as well, which we stopped in March this year, is the affiliation fee that the shuls were paying to the UOS. We've been able to do away with that as well. So in the past, we had multiple other small sources of revenue, but they were important. We're trying to move to an environment where if we can get more and more kosher products certified, and as I said to you earlier on, we achieved 154 new companies in 3 years. We're continuing that process. It's almost a sales process of trying to get people to take up the hersha. We will build more revenue, and hopefully that will allow us to then even cross-subsidize other components which feel the pressure more. We would love to be able to cross-subsidize more some of the other food services down the line, but we have to see if we can get there, and hopefully getting more and more kosher product will get there. So that's really the revenue of the business. If you look at the profit, I don't know if you want to talk about the profit or if you have a question.
Definitely, please go for it. There's lots of questions, but I mean, this was one of the questions, so go for it.
Okay, so the profit of the business now, I'm calling it the business, using that term loosely, but we're getting the accounts are being audited at the moment by BDO. BDO and Grant Thornton merged a year ago, and under the brand of BDO, they're very respectable auditors. They're doing the audit for us, of course, because it's done pro bono for us. We can't insist that it get done earlier. But it will be complete within the next week to two. We'll post those accounts on the web in the next 2 weeks. We'll have posted those accounts there. The profit for the period was about, it's unaudited, so it could change, but it's roughly 216,000 Rand, which is pretty small. So from year to year, because it's a non-profit organization, from year to year, the numbers are either going to be a small negative or a small positive, but it's not there. If we make big profits, which would be great, by the way, because it means a lot more people have taken the Hersha, then we will be able to plow that back in to other services and try to reduce the costs of some of the other components. So that's the profitability. It is made up of components, but we can address that maybe later.
Can I just clarify one thing there, if I may, and that is in the Kosher Department, there are again these two divisions. The food services division is essentially money in, money out, because whatever is charged to the butcheries and bakeries is used as to cover the minimum service that's required. So it's at cost, actually, as Kenny pointed out, slightly less than cost. And the profits that are coming in from the manufacturing division, which is corporate South Africa, who are manufacturing products for 60 million South Africans. That's the only division in the UOS that is actually profitable.
Okay, and that division is then generating money that goes to the Kashrut Department, the Beth Din, the Chief Rabbi's Office, and the whole of the UOS, basically. Okay.
Correct. The cross-subsidized model.
Yeah. So you spoke of some other income from the UOS. What would that be?
The other income is small, Peta. For example, when it comes to arbitrating a monetary dispute or a get or those things, but in relation to the total revenue, it's quite small. The other revenue is 2.5 million. It's made up of all those Beth Din services. It included in the year last year things like affiliation fees, which will disappear. So the percentage of revenue that will be kashrut will actually only increase probably going forward.
Okay. And I mean, and the genuine costs that the Kashrut Department have, what are those costs that these millions are really going to?
Okay, Rabbi Dovi, do you want to? I mean, it's obviously your department. Do you want to talk to it?
Well, in terms of the entire, so the Beth Din, Chief Rabbi's Office, Kashrut Department.
Look, obviously, the payroll makes up 22.7 million.
Okay.
Right. So the salaries of all the employees that work in the whole of the UAS makes up 22.7. Now, Peta, I mean, those salaries, so they're 41 people. Peta, what happens is really the board has got a remuneration committee.
Yes.
The remuneration committee, which are all independent people. I'm not on it, but people independent in the same way as myself, who benchmark the salaries of the various people working there, but they benchmark them against the type of organization like the UOS. I mean, they're not benchmarking salaries against what you could get in the open market, which would be dramatically higher for many of the people working there. And that's the process. Largely, those salaries are funded from the money coming in from the Hersha. So, if you take 70% of the revenue, which is coming in from these large corporates, they are effectively paying the salaries of everyone in the UOS.
So sorry. So you're talking about the UOS. I thought I understood that there were 40 people employed in the Kashrut Department. Is that not true? Is it the whole of the UOS?
Yeah, of those 40 employees, 30 of them are employed in the Kashrut Department, and then the remaining 10 are between the Beth Din and the Office of the Chief Rabbi.
Okay. So it's salaries and and I guess rentals. And the like.
Sure.
I guess one of the things that people were upset about, and is that they felt quite strongly that the producers and manufacturers were funding the chief rabbi's office or funding the UOS or the Beth Din.
Peta, maybe let me talk to that, because I think maybe it's inappropriate for the chief to respond on the costs of his office.
Yeah.
And this is to put the costs out there. The costs of the chief rabbi's office are 2.6 million rand.
Yeah.
Right, of which about 600,000 of that comes from Cape Town to us, because Cape Town have sort of their own UOS, if you want to call it that, but they share the chief rabbi. So they pay towards the chief rabbi's cost. So then that leaves 2 million if I net off what we're getting from Cape Town. That pays for the chief rabbi, the 5 people that work in his office, the rental associated, the insurance, the IT printing, all of that, the stakeholder management. As you know, he engages with the government. He managed to get us 4 hours davening for Yom Kippur from the government. He's very involved in government engagement. And of course, stakeholder management, one of his big constituencies is all the rabbis, or stakeholders, is all the rabbis in South Africa. And of course, he engages with them on a regular basis. And therefore the costs, what we believe is, firstly, the chief rabbi has always fallen under the UOS, but we believe that the cost of 2 million rand for the chief, all of his staff, and the related incidental costs that go with that are a small price for what the chief rabbi brings to South Africa in terms of the various initiatives. But it's absolutely crucial to say that the UOS is uninvolved with things like Sinai. We're uninvolved with the Shabbos project. In fact, whilst the only way we know some of the donors for those things is because at like Sinai, for example, you'll see boards up. That'll say Max Steel and all the various donors that the chief in his own capacity gets. But the UOS does not pay 1 cent towards any of those major projects that the chief rabbi runs.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? And I know I'm pleased that Kenny could deal with those questions and not me, but I want to just make clear to what we're saying here, that the total cost of the offices, as Kenny mentioned, these other projects are part of my mandate as chief rabbi. In other words, my mandate as chief rabbi is to spread Torah values to the community and to uplift the community. And so I've done that through Sinai and Darba Shabbos Project, Generation Sinai, the Beit Midrash Project in King David, etc., and through initiatives like CAP and Geshe and all these things. All of these initiatives are part of my mandate, but we've had to look for private donor funding to support these initiatives, to bring them as a service to the community without having the revenues to come from the UOS. The 2 million is the only part that comes from the UOS, and that comes purely from the profits from corporate South Africa. In other words, doesn't come from food services, because the food services, whatever revenues come from there, go to support the restaurants, bakeries, and butcheries. The only part of it comes from corporate South Africa to fund this, and that 2.6 million that's mentioned, that's including all employees in that, including me. The only thing that it doesn't include is the security bill, which is something which unfortunately we need in this world that is filled with potential terrorist threats, and unfortunately I'm a target in that. Because of my position, and as you know from our previous work together, I sometimes get myself into hot water when it comes to matters relating to Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I somebody's just posted over here saying the average salary at the UOS is 550,000 rand. Does that make any sense to anybody? I mean, is that a truth?
Peta, the average annual salary is around 480,000. That's an annual salary.
Okay, and is that senior management or?
No, that's the average. So it will include the most senior people and obviously the most junior people, and that's the average of it.
And compared to somebody at the same level in corporate, what is the comparison?
Look, I can talk about the senior people. I guess I'm not sure I can talk about, what I could tell you is from the chief rabbi's perspective, and chief, maybe you want to block your ears at the moment, but if the chief rabbi operated as a lawyer in corporate South Africa, he would earn dramatically more than he earns from the UOS. I think we're very grateful to have him at the price we have him. And I think we have very able people. Rabbi Dovi, we haven't mentioned Jared Abelson. I mean, Jared is on our finance side. He's done a brilliant job, really. He's on top of all the numbers, does a brilliant job. Yes. Okay. Yes. So, and all our Dayanim are of great caliber. And so I think actually the salary bill, and I'm saying this from someone working in the corporate world, I think is certainly not exorbitant. But for me, Peta, the most important point is most of it's actually been covered by hechshers from corporate South Africa.
Okay, well then that's, yeah. Can I, was it this morning or yesterday, Chief, you were talking about 2013 when you were given executive powers of the UOS. Are you still the chief executive of the UOS? How has that changed?
And I think it's important to clarify.
Yes.
I've never been a chief executive officer. What happened back then at the end of 2013, and it started being in 2014, is that the board of the UOS came to me and Rabbi Kruzdag. The organization then in 2014 was in a terrible way. There'd been a tremendous amount of mismanagement. There was there were so many of the operations were in a poor state, and there was a real danger of the UOS becoming completely insolvent. So they came to me and Rabbi Kruzdag and they said, would we take responsibility to form like an executive management team? It was an executive management team. It wasn't a classic CEO role, but it was really to say, since we are the top executives in the organization, can we find a way to get stuck into the nitty-gritty and restructure together with the board? And of course, the board has been driving the process all along. All budgets are approved by the board, strategy and direction. But that was part of the modernization of the UOS, because I'll tell you this, many communal organizations function where the volunteer board takes an operational role, and that's how it used to be until 2014. And there was also and the senior executives, there was a serious problem there about the management of the organization. So they came. I didn't want to take it on. I mean, I love promoting Shabbos. I love spreading a message out there into the country and the community, and to get involved in operations and to the restructure. But I felt I had a duty, however unpleasant it was, and I can tell you it's been extremely unpleasant over these years to get stuck into that. But I felt I had a duty to do that in order to save the organization, but working together with the board every step of the way. And slowly we've restructured and modernized the organization. And I think now as an organization, we're kind of ready for the next phase where I'm much less involved. I mean, Rabbi Dovi is doing a tremendous job in the Kosher Department. We have an outstanding board. And after that restructure, I'm much, much less involved than I ever was in the early years when we really had to fix it up and turn it around.
So at this point in time, does the Beth Din and the Kosher Department and the UOS still report to you? Or do they report to the board?
No, they report to
the board. Okay. So how often do they report to the board?
Peta, I mean, we have I think I sent the list in actually that you published last week of who the board members are. Yeah,
and it's a very impressive list.
Yeah. The board is chaired by Harold Novik, who does a great job doing that. We have regular board meetings. Before every board meeting, a pack is produced by the heads of each of the areas. So, for example, the Dayanim prepare a board pack, the Kashrut area prepares a board pack, etc. All of that goes out prior to a board meeting, and we've improved it dramatically over the last 18 months. It never used to be the case several years ago, but now there's sort of a lot more kind of in-depth interrogation of all of those things. And I think we have to think going forward, whilst I don't believe we need a CEO per se in the business, because each of the areas is now separate, sort of a separate silo reporting to the board. What we might need to think about is like a chief operations officer who makes sure that the thing is just running well. The service levels, what are our time periods to respond to things, and all of that type of thing. And we'll have to think going forward, just are we set up, is the structure optimal to deliver all of those things? But I think pretty much the board meetings, whenever there's an issue, we call a board meeting. We've had 2 board meetings over the last, since this sort of crisis emerged.
But so you once a month, I take it. I mean, much like our board, the Jewish Report Board meets once a month.
Typically, it's actually once a quarter that we meet. I mean, maybe I guess us in the corporate world are used to more sort of every 4 to 5 meetings a year. But when there's a need to call a separate meeting, we will do that. And sometimes it won't necessarily be a board meeting. There'll be a working group of people looking at a particular issue and then reporting back to the board.
Okay, so in actual fact, everybody is working independently but it's an oversight really of the board. You're not really involved in the day-to-day running.
No, we're not involved at all in the day-to-day running. What I will say is all of the areas are very closely related. So, for example, Rabbi Dovi runs the operations for Kashrut, and he will do all the work, his area, to effectively prepare the case file on a certain product. That will then go to a Dayan to sign off. There's no product that goes out with a certificate not signed by a Dayan of the Beth Din. So there's a lot of interaction between the various areas inside the organization.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, for example, as Kenny said, sorry, in terms of like working with the Beth Din, I work very closely with the Beth Din. I'm meeting with them, every week, and then also very closely with Rabbi Dovi. But I think the beauty is each one of these 3 divisions has different areas of work. And in a certain sense, it's beautifully held together under one umbrella. But each division, Beth Din, Kosher, and Chief Rabbi, are serving the community all in different ways. So they need that space to be able to develop and to grow.
Okay. So they're not reporting to you, but you're sharing ideas. Is that more?
Yes, yes, certainly. I mean, the Beth Din, I think it's very important to state this, and I want to use this opportunity to state this publicly because I've heard many people raise questions about this. The Beth Din is an independent institution in the sense that the Dayanim have to decide matters of halakha and matters of Jewish law. They have autonomy to decide that, and they work out how to run the conversions and the gittin and the monetary arbitrations, and they paskin, they rule on all of the matters relating to the Kosher Department. They take ultimate responsibility for the hechsher, so they're not involved in the operations of the Kosher Department, but they set the halachic standards and policies. That's also what's unique about a hechsher. BD stands for Beth Din. Many places it's not a Beth Din hechsher, it's just a hechsher. That's why we've got such a wonderful reputation all around the world, known for those high standards. And I meet with the Dayan and we work together very closely, but as colleagues.
Yes, okay. I'm going to ask a question, but I'd like to ask Danny while I'm asking this question to put up our 3rd poll. And this is a question that's very close to my heart. I noticed it was very difficult not to, and as did other people, that the board is represented only by men. And my question is why? I mean, half of the community, maybe perhaps more than half of the community are female. Why is there no female representative on the board?
I think it's a good question, and I think if I would say this in the spirit of learning over the last 2 weeks, it's something we need to. The board comes as a result of elections which are held at conferences. The board is democratically elected. Unlike many organizations, for example, many boards of communal organizations actually are not elected into their positions, but the UOS board is. And so when the shuls send delegates to a conference, and it's turned out like that. But Peta, I think you're raising a very important point in the spirit of learning. I think we really need to make sure that this is something that becomes much more representative. So point is well made and taken completely.
I agree. And before I'm a bit concerned that the people on YouTube are not being able to read the poll. So let me quickly read it. How happy are you with the UOS Kosher Department, Beth Din, Chief Rabbi's office? First answer, I'm very happy. Second, I'm generally happy. Third, I'm fairly concerned. And fourth, I'm deeply disappointed. Okay, so that poll can, perhaps we can give them a little bit more time, because I don't know if YouTube was able to answer any of those. Looks like it's already been shared.
YouTube are actually able to vote. I have questions on YouTube where people can actually post posting in the chat section. So
okay, thank you, Danny. Okay, so the results of this are 33% say they're fairly concerned. 29% say they're deeply disappointed. 25% are generally happy. So it's look, there's nobody saying they're absolutely devastated. So I think that's a good thing. And I think there is only one way that you can go, and that is up. At least I hope so. Okay, so let's carry on. Following the stand, okay, no, this it's getting in my way. I can't seem to get rid of this on my screen. Okay. So you spoke of the shul affiliation fee and the simcha fee being scrapped, which is great news for many people, for all of us actually. But one of the things that you mentioned this morning, Chief, was the mashgichim, and that we know, most of us know that at this point, the mashgichim are being paid by the restaurants or the caterers or the retailers, which to me seems really open to abuse. Because if as a mashgiach, you're seeing that the person who's paying your salary is doing something wrong, you're going to be a little bit reticent to run to the Kosher Department to say there's a problem. So I mean, I do understand, as you were saying earlier, that this is a situation in many parts of the world, but surely there is something that can be done about it. What can be done about it? And if so, when will this be done?
One thing I'd like to say, maybe Rabbi Dovi can talk more to the practicalities of it, of what it would look like, of how possible it would be for the establishments. I think there's one to be able to do that directly from a practical point of view. But I think just to clarify with our mashgichim, firstly, I want to pay tribute to them because they're hardworking and the conditions are really difficult. And we actually, one of the things that we are also doing is setting up like a kind of review committee to assist with when mashgichim have complaints and they've got issues which maybe they've addressed to the Kosher Department and they feel that they're not getting the kind of answers that they're looking for. And we're setting up also with one of our board members, Bradley Sifris, together with Professor Andrew Levy. Professor Levy is one of the top labor law professors.
Yes.
Yes, in South Africa. He's written textbooks. He's an outstanding person. And so we're looking for ways to help improve the work conditions of the mashgichim. And that's something that we're working on. But I think as the reason why globally it hasn't worked, and this is something that we really wanted. And at the time of Stan and Pete, I had publicly said this is something that we want to move towards. And it was also even a recommendation in the Bowman's report. And it's something that we we desperately want, but we've had a lot of practical problems in achieving that. And that's why globally it hasn't yet been achieved in other places of the world, nowhere to the best of my knowledge. But Rabbi Dovi will be able to talk to it better than me on this. But it's been a really big practical problem, how to solve that. But to realize this, the accreditation of a Mashgiach rests with the Beth Din and the Kosher Department. So even if they were to leave the position of a particular establishment, they would be redeployed to another establishment, because there are lots of establishments that are needing mashgichim, and a lot has been done to improve training of mashgichim and to be able to and to place them in different places. But it isn't ideal, and we also need to do a lot more to support our mashgichim, because their work conditions are really tough. I had a meeting with Mashgiachim about 2 weeks ago, and I heard directly from them the difficulties that they're facing day to day. And I think it's something that we really need to improve and to do better at. But Rabbi Dovi, maybe you can explain, the practicalities of the UOS employing the Mashgiachim as opposed to the food establishment.
Peta, there's over 100 Mashgiachim in our system.
Yes.
And as the Chief Rabbi said, they really do work in some very difficult conditions. And what's quite incredible, the vast majority of them see this as a calling. And we ran an internal poll a while back at our Mashgiach conference with Mashgiachim. And the vast majority said that though their jobs are very difficult, they see this as their contribution almost to the community. So we acknowledge their service and the difficulties that they go through. But on the ground, our kosher food services are inspected, are certified and are supervised by our mashgiachim, which is pretty incredible. We have just, as the Chief Rabbi mentioned, we've just been through 4,000 hours, training hours, where we have a special BD South Africa edition of the ACO Mashgiach course. Now, what's happening internationally is that ACO is trying for all mashgiachim around the world to be accredited. We currently have the most mashgiachim accredited internationally by the ACO course, and our BD version of that is extensive. It's got exams, it's over 10 hours of video that our mashgiachim have been through. As the Chief Rabbi mentioned, it is on our wish list to have mashgiachim ideally employed by the UOS itself. The challenges, and this is international challenges, but in South Africa it's amplified, are that you've got to take care of many labor issues in order to ensure a workforce of 100 people. And in South Africa, obviously, with labor being such a difficult a topic in South Africa, we were unable to achieve it at this point for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is simply the outlay. If you take 100 mashgiachim, you're going to have to find millions of rands a year to outlay that in order to pay them in advance and to take that risk. And
well, there is that, or you could take the money, and this is just a suggestion. You could take the money that is being paid to them by the caterer, or whatever. The caterer pays you, and you pay, so that they don't. It's not actually coming from them. That's almost like how much money they're paying to have a mashgiach. I mean, that's just off the top.
Absolutely right, and I know it sounds simple, but I think one of the challenges there is that often mashgiachim are paid at the end of the month, and most food services simply don't have the extra to lay that out in advance. And as I say, this is certainly on our wish list. And what is very important, as the Chief Rabbi mentioned, is that we certify mashgiachim. And as I said, we find that mashgiachim are incredible. They work for a certain place, but their will to make sure and maintain the kosher supervision is so strong that the relationship with mashgiachim is that they take the kashrut side of it incredibly seriously, and that relationship has been building and is dynamic, and we're there to try and support them as much as possible.
Can I ask something? Because an anonymous person asked this on Q&A. What is the salary of a mashgiach or mashgicha? Because this person said they hear horrible stories of how they're treated, and remuneration amount doesn't seek to satisfy any of them for the amount of hours they work. Is this
Peta,
yes.
Peta, I mean, I wanted to maybe just butt in here. I've tried to, and even with my interview with Nicola the other day from the paper, I've kind of felt that salaries, feel very strongly that salaries shouldn't be discussed in the public. It's not done anywhere. It's not the norm. The fact that directors of listed companies are forced to do that, trust me, none of them want to see their names. So I just don't think it's dignified to discuss the salaries of any of our employees or the mashgichim. And I think we should really try and avoid going down that avenue.
But fair enough. No, that makes sense. But my question is, do they earn enough for the work they do?
Rabbi Dovi, Chief.
So I think, Peta, it's very market related. Mashgiachim are paid by the food services establishments that effectively negotiate directly with the mashgiachim, unless it's overtime or when there's temporary placements or Pesach work, then it goes through the UOS. But the vast majority kind of operate in a free market where individual mashgiachim negotiate their salaries or their working salaries with the independent food services that they work for.
Can I say this? I'm pretty sure, and I don't know, I haven't seen the salaries, but I'm pretty sure that these are salaries which the mashgiachim are really struggling on, and I've heard that feedback from them. And one of the big challenges, that's why we're trying to establish this review committee to look at what can be done to improve work conditions and salaries for mashgiachim. One of the big challenges is that the places that they work for, which are these food establishments, this is not big corporate South Africa. These are small, struggling entrepreneurs. So they themselves are struggling, and then they've got to pay their staff, and then they've got to pay the mashgiach, and they're struggling to give good prices to the community and to make a living and to meet all of their things. And so they're struggling to pay the mashgiachim what the mashgiachim need for a living wage. And so you have this economic problem, which is so hard to solve. And I think that's also an important element to realize of what is at play often in these things, is that there are independent businesses which are struggling, these entrepreneurs. But on the other hand, the mashgiachim, we can't let them down because they're the heart and soul of kashrut. But it's so hard to solve because you're dealing with struggling entrepreneurs at the same time. So I don't have solutions. I'm just saying I think it's a problem. We need to look at it. And that's why we're trying to put together this review committee to brainstorm what can we do to make this better. And, hopefully we can find something.
Yeah. So another question is, does the panel have any comment? And this I know nothing about. So if any comment about the issue raised in the last 2 weeks of mashgiachim who were whistleblowers and told to be quiet. I don't know if that rings...
Not from us.
Yeah.
Rabbi Dovi, I'm sure I know nothing about that. Do you aware of anything on that?
Certainly not.
Okay. Well, I don't know more about it.
But again, Pet, I just think that the body that will be set up with Bradley Sifris and Andrew Levy, I think should be used to address these issues. And as the chief rabbi said, hopefully find a solution that is workable for everyone. There's no question we have to treat mashgiachim, need to be treated well, they need to be treated properly, and they need to earn a proper living wage. And that's all of our problem, to be honest. It's not just the problem of a restaurant or whatever. We need to collectively find a solution, and we've got to aim for that.
And also, Peta, I think what's an important thing, the mashgiach's job is to notify when there's a kashrut breach. So it's the whole system is built on that. So how could there ever be, and I think this is a very important thing, because there have been allegations made about fear. And, I just want to say over the last 2 weeks, amongst the people who went on radio to complain, we're currently registered mashgiachim, certified by the UOS. They went on radio to complain about the UOS, okay, and they are still certified mashgiachim working in the system, and they felt very happy to make those comments in public, and I'm pleased that they felt. There's no fear. If they were afraid, they wouldn't have made those comments on a public radio, and they're still in their jobs and gesundheit. I would rather say to all people like that, That's why we're setting up these structures, because I think what we've learned from the last 2 weeks is we need to give a structural space when people have issues, that there's an independent structured space for them to come to vent those issues in a way that we can actually take action, because we want to improve all the time.
But it's interesting you say that, because it was something that I have noticed, both in the emails that I've received and on listening on Chai FM, is how many people are very afraid of being named, and how they weren't willing to tell us the stories, but they're terrified that it would get back to them. And I'm not quite sure why, but there is a sense of fear of being identified. And I don't know, I think the question is, what can you do as the UOS to engender that trust and that feeling that you can, people can come forward and be honest and spill the beans if it's about whistleblowing, if it's about their own particular problems. What can you do to engender that trust?
Peta, I think we have to, as a UOS, we have to give those staff, those people, a guarantee that they will not lose their jobs over that. And I'm saying this on a public platform, that people will not lose their jobs by coming forward and talking to us. The very nature and the very reason of me stepping down from that ombudsman role is because we do need the independence as well to be able to deal with some of these issues. And as the chief rabbis explained, we're putting that all in place. But we will create the right structures over the next week or two to make sure that people feel safe with it, but they have a guarantee that no one will lose their job over constructive discussion. Okay, if people have breach and do other things and break their contracts and all other, that's a different debate. That's a disciplinary issue. But we shouldn't be going down that road at all. We need to have people who trust us. We need to have a community that trusts us. Importantly, we need to really have a community that trusts our kashrut.
Yes.
I've had questions being raised by people, can we eat the products and that? I want to tell you, we have fantastic kashrut in South Africa. We need to move beyond that and resolve the problems.
Yes, I agree. I 100% agree. Can we take poll number 4 now? Please, Danny. Hello, Danny. Okay, after tonight's webinar, what best describes your view? I'm satisfied all of the issues have been adequately addressed. I don't think we've received acceptable answers. There's still many things that concern me, and I don't think the issues have been addressed. It was a complete waste of time. I do hope it wasn't a complete waste of time, but we're not done yet. There were a couple of interesting, well, there were lots of interesting questions that we're trying to get to, but how does the board follow the King report?
I think, look, the operation of, call it the UOS as a business, I think doesn't have the levels of governance structures that you'll see in most listed companies. It's a very small organization that has drawn massive interest over the last 2 weeks, which is actually wonderful. But I think from a governance point of view, we have in place what we believe the organization needs to function appropriately.
Yes.
But I think the board is very focused now, rethinking the way forward. I think it's clear more transparency is required. Many suggestions, I'm not going to recap them all. And our aim is to be as a board to implement all of those things. So we're going to be looking at every aspect of the governance, the recommendations. And I think, Peta, what's really important for us as a board is, it's easy to come on a show like this and say, we're going to do. It'll be a really bad outcome if we come back in 4 months' time or 3 months' time, whatever, nothing's done.
Yes,
so the
and we should. I think we should commit to doing that. We should commit to coming back and seeing how far things have come. Howard, I hope you're listening to this, but I think let's do this and go back and see what's happened at the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
Absolutely. I think the chief rabbi, I think, should also just talk to King 4 as well.
Look, I think what I would like to say, and I think this is an important point that I would like to share with the community. There's been a lot of noise over the last 2 weeks about the UOS, and you can hear from the way that we're all speaking tonight that it's something. This is a learning experience for us, and we're happy to take the lessons and to do better. But I do think in context here, we're talking about an organization that certainly in comparison to many other communal organizations has a very high level of governance associated with it, with the board that is democratically elected, with a board which signs off the budget, with the remuneration committee, with a board that determines the strategy, with board packs and a whole structure, and even a modern approach, which I think is very important, because it's moving away from the old-fashioned communal organization where volunteers would be involved in the operations. So I think actually the UOS has modernized a lot. And especially since 2014, we've done a lot to rebuild the organization, set it on its way forward. There's a lot more to learn, but I don't think it would be fair to say, oh, well, this is an organization that is short on governance and transparency, and now we're all of a sudden starting today to be well governed and transparent. I think governance and transparency is a spectrum, and it's a journey. And we've been on a journey over the last number of years, and the journey's in the right direction. We're not where we want to be, but we're moving in that right direction. We're committed to getting there. And I think, because I'm very familiar with lots of communal organizations, and I'm biased because I'm part of the UOS, but I actually think, comparatively speaking, we're doing well. And I can say this, I don't think there's an organization, a communal organization in the country that has been subjected to the kind of public scrutiny that we have. I would like to see other communal organizations volunteer to come onto an open webinar with a professional editor who can ask any question she wishes and say, here are our financials, this is how we govern. I challenge any communal organization, come join the Jewish Report on this and answer to the community. And we volunteered for this. We've been under more scrutiny than anybody else. I'm happy for that scrutiny, but I think there needs to be a sense of perspective that other organizations are not getting the scrutiny. But I'm not complaining about fair or unfair, but I'm just saying I think the UOS is on this journey, and I think I'm happy to open up in this, but I think there needs to be that context of what's going on in the rest of the community and in the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Having said that, we're listening with humility.
But can I tell you what the polls don't feel as if we've addressed everything? The 59% say there are still many issues that concern me, and I don't think the issues have been addressed. However, there are 25% that say, I'm satisfied all the issues have been adequately addressed. So I guess we're going to have to come back. There's lots more work to do. There's a question about who appoints the board, because you mentioned that the board is democratically appointed. Who appoints the board?
I mean, the way that it works in terms of the constitution of the UOS is that it is made up of member shuls, the Orthodox synagogues. There is a UOS in the Cape Province, and then the UOS here in Joburg covers the rest of the country. And shuls send delegates from Durban, from Pretoria, obviously from Johannesburg, and they then cast their votes to elect the board. There are many organizations that don't actually have open elections for their board members.
Yeah. Okay. In your Sunday night webinar, you spoke of setting up a review board, also looking at pricing and servicing in the food services industry. What's that going to deal with specifically, and how will you select the people involved with that?
So that was I was referring to before is Bradley Sifris and Professor Andrew Levy. And also, look, the terms of reference of that still have to be worked out, and as soon as they are, then those will be shared publicly, and I'm sure that will be very soon. And that will be a review panel that will be able to look at concerns of mashgichim as well as concerns of the proprietors of these food service establishments, how we can help them better and support them better and make sure that they have a place to go to if they have issues. It's creating these safety valves in the system so that, you know, people have somewhere to go.
Okay.
And Professor Levy then would be independent. Bradley Sifris is a board member of the UOS. Professor Levy is independent.
Yes. So there are two issues that keep coming up in the question and answers that are very big. And one is going back to Stan and Pete, and what has happened with that? You know, has there been any punishment meted out? There seems to be a real need for punishment to be meted out, and that they feel that basically it wasn't adequately dealt with.
Okay, Chief.
And Kenny, unless you...
No, look, I think, you know, the Stan and Pete incident was distressing to every one of us in the community. I have to tell you, I was quite close to it at the time because my daughter was booked to get married 10 days after this whole thing broke. So it was like a real crisis in my life. And I think to many people, everyone felt let down, everyone felt betrayed. It was emotionally... it rocked the whole of the community. You know, I think what we tried to do, and it took a long time, was we tried to get two independent reports done. Firstly, from Bowman's. It was done from an independent lawyer on a pro bono basis, again, doing a report on the incident. And of course, then from the international Kashrut delegation that looked into it as well. The reality is, I mean, I think the ultimate price is that the caterer lost their hersha and was taken out of business by us, you know, which I think is the ultimate price. The investigation never provided enough to actually criminally prosecute or anything like that. I mean, obviously, you know, to get people to talk and to give you all the information, and that didn't materialize the way we would have wanted it to happen.
Yes.
So it's one of those things, I think that's, you know, I think no one's really comfortable with the final outcome, including us.
Yes.
But I think really he paid the ultimate price of losing the hersha. And not sure there's much more actually that we could have done. I mean, all the independent investigations pretty much ground to a halt after months, going on for 7-8 months. We posted the Bowman's report. I think it couldn't have been taken much further, Peta.
Okay.
Chief, to add, you were very close.
Can I add to that? I think, firstly, in terms of the Bowman's report, that investigation was headed by Jonathan Schlossberg, who was, you know, previously the chairman of Bowman's and one of the most respected lawyers in the country. Bowman's very generously provided a full team to do this investigation. So it wasn't just Jonathan on his own, you know, kind of going from person to person. He had a team of forensic people inside Bowman's, and they took them hundreds of hours over many months of investigations to try and scrape together any piece of evidence and to create the picture. Their full report is, anyone who wants it, you know, can email the US. We published it at the time and made it freely available for everybody. And they said that, you know, they couldn't find, there wasn't enough there to be able to recommend pressing criminal prosecution. And so there wasn't much more that could be done after that. When people say punish, we're not in a position to punish people. You know, we live in a country with a legal system that has to take care of that. And then as well, in terms of the international kashrut people that came, we gave them full access. They came from the OU and the CRC, the Chicago Kashrut, and the OU, which is the most prestigious kashrut organization in the world. They came here. We gave them full access to our Kosher Department. They combed through everything to say, are there systemic problems? They found a number of areas of weakness. They made recommendations. They actually helped us to create the roadmap for Rabbi Dovi to revamp the Kosher Department, which he's done with tremendous focus since that visit. And in fact, there was a journalist from one of the Kashrut magazines in America, I forget his name right now, who wrote to me, and he said, because these incidents happen all over the world, he said he's never seen a community deal with something with greater transparency and accountability than we did. We had 2 separate independent investigations. He says most communities don't even have one. And so I actually think Stan and Pete was a moment of shame for all of us as a community. But on the other hand, the real test of a crisis is how you respond to it. And while it is shameful that it happened, and we as the UOS need, have to, in a certain sense, apologize to the community for not being able to catch it, to do better at it. But at the same time, I think we can also take pride in the response and the accountability and transparency with which it was dealt with post that terribly tragic event.
The next thing is that keeps coming up is and it's not going to go away, is how are you going to resolve the issue with Kathy and Chai FM? Because people feel very strongly that she was really badly treated, and I think what are you going to do to resolve this? Because a resolution has to happen.
Peta, I think
that's what I believe.
Okay, so let me say this. This is not a personal matter. I don't have a personal matter. I had a private meeting amongst rabbis where we discussed the importance of lodging our voices in a democratic way about the debate on what is fair journalism, and that was made. That was then turned into an allegation of intimidation. I have no personal issues.
Where are you going to take this now? Because there is bad blood. There is an ugly situation. You say one thing, she says something else. There was wrong done.
But look, I went on the radio this morning. Look, since the incident of Friday, I went on Chai FM this morning. I made myself open to an hour-long interview with Kathy. She interviewed me this morning. We had an entire interview. It was a robust interview, and I answered her questions. She asked her questions. We had a robust interview where it got heated, and for this I feel very strongly. To make an allegation of intimidation is a very serious allegation. I reject that allegation in emphatic terms, and it is something which I feel very strongly about. And I said it this morning on the radio that allegation needs to be retracted. Having said that, I've told her what I believe she should do. She can do it on, but in the meantime, this morning I was on the radio on Chai FM since Friday, being involved in an interview. So I don't see that there's anything further to be done on this matter. I was on Chai FM on being interviewed. I gave myself open to a full hour interview where all kinds of questions were asked, and I answered all of those questions, and I participated. It's not like I said, oh, well, I'm not coming on the radio because you said X, Y, and Z on Friday. I came on the radio. I said that allegation is false. It's fake news. It's nonsense. It's a lie. It's defamation. I reject it. But I sat through the whole interview, and I'm always open to responding to questions from any journalist. But what I do feel as a community, we need ethical, professional journalism. And I think that is something which is so important.
Okay, so I'm going to start finishing, can I say? And I want to look at the bigger picture of the fact that there are people out there, and a lot of them, and I say this with the greatest of respect because I've received emails and looking at the Q&As here and the chats. People look at the UOS and are still seeing a culture of secrecy and lack of transparency.
Peta.
Yes, yes.
I would like to.
You can stop. You know what I'm going to ask.
Okay. Look, I understand all of that. And as I've said earlier on, issues of transparency, in fact, that is what King 4 is all about. If you go Google on the PwC or any auditor's website, you'll see it's all about transparency. I think we've woken up as a body to a new reality that people want to see that transparency. We've never thought most people wanted to see the accounts of the UOS in the past. And as I actually said in the interview with Nicola last week, we actually don't feel we have anything to hide. We don't mind this debate. We're comfortable. What I was going to suggest is not even to wait for the next webinar to happen, but in the interim, there are hundreds of questions that have come up here, which people might be dissatisfied that we haven't answered. There's just no way we can cover all those questions, but email them in to either the chairman, Harold Novick. He actually, I think, gave his email address. If not, we'll make sure that you get that, or myself, and we'll deal with them. We'll respond on each one so that by the time your next webinar happens, we can say, this is what we've done.
That's fantastic. No, I'm happy with that. I just hope that the community has, can I say, had questions answered. I feel like I have had. I don't know that we've addressed everything, but
if I may say, just on the point that Kenny mentioned here, and I think there's always room to grow and to improve. But I really think, and I know all of the communal organizations. I'm very familiar with them, having been in this job 16, 17 years already. And I can say this, in my opinion, and I know I'm biased, the UOS is probably one of the most transparent organizations in this country, because we subject ourselves to complete scrutiny and all the time. And here we are doing it. I volunteered for this. I mean, I said, listen, we want to come on the webinar, ask any question. We've nothing. It in a certain sense is disproportionate. What about all of the other organizations? I think that the UOS is so transparent. I mean, we've got a long way to go, and as always, and it's a journey, because we're living in a world where the demands for transparency become higher and higher all the time. But we want to meet those, because in actual fact, the more that we can tell the story of the UOS, I think the more the community is going to draw comfort, because there's actually lots of good to share, and then we get the feedback, and then we can grow from it. But I think the narrative that somehow everything is open, but the UOS is this dark corner of secrecy, I think is a really unfair narrative. I think when looked at objectively in terms of the facts, someone can present another argument, I'm willing to hear it, but I think it's not a fair narrative, my opinion, biased though it may be.
Okay, well, I mean, it's not my narrative. It's not my narrative, and here's hoping that the narrative changes and that people see things differently. As the UOS grows and changes and improves. I hand now over to Howard to finish off the evening.
Peta, I want to thank you. This has not been an easy webinar. We've had more than 350 questions from the public during the webinar. I know you received hundreds of emails before the webinar to try put it into really something concise that the community could get value from. I know it's been impossible. I think you've done a magnificent job this evening. I do want to apologize to those people whose questions we haven't gotten to. And I want to thank very, very much Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein and Rabbi Dovi Goldstein for coming on, because it's really not easy to come and face your community, face the people you serve, and answer some very difficult questions. The clear response is 70% of the people watching this think you've got a long way to go. But I think the important thing is, Chief Rabbi Goldstein, I believe you are absolutely committed to creating a better community in South Africa, to having a better society for all of us. And for that, I thank you. And I really appreciate that you've come onto this program tonight to answer. But I want to talk to Kenny man to man. And Kenny, I haven't met you before, and I hope this is the start of a long relationship between us, because you've genuinely impressed me this evening. But I want to speak to you in my personal capacity, because ultimately you sit as a non-executive member of the board. You, like me,
Howard, we can't go through your medical aid claims online now.
But Kenny, you, like me, give up your time and your energy and your effort voluntarily to help serve and create a better community. And I just want to say one thing to you, because ultimately the chief rabbi and Dovi Goldstein work for you as a board. And I want to say one thing. We're 52,000 people in a tiny community. We cannot be fractured. We cannot allow our community to be torn apart. What Kathy Kaler did was doing her job. It was not Chilul Hashem. It was not a disgrace. She shouldn't be singled out. She shouldn't be punished. That is the job of the media, and she was here representing our community. She, just like the chief rabbi, wants to build a better society for all of us. She, like the chief rabbi, wants kosher food. She wants an efficient Beth Din. She wants a kosher department that actually works and serves the community. All 52,000 of us who are stupid enough to keep kosher, despite the prices. That was her job as well. And you as a board have to go and recognize and understand that we have no tolerance in this community for the sort of language that was used between either of them. No tolerance whatsoever. We will not permit our community to be pulled apart by this. And the non-executive members who control these organizations have to get these people together to smash heads and actually resolve the issue on behalf of our entire community. Because that is the interest and the community that we give of our time and energy to serve. So Kenny, I pose that to you as a challenge, because we have to solve this. We can't allow it to continue. The bad blood has to end, and we have to move forward and go build a better society, a better South Africa, and a better, more vibrant Jewish community for all of us.
Howard, if I may say something.
Howard, from my side, sorry,
Chief, sorry, I'm talking to Kenny. You have to allow him the chance to talk.
If I can just respond, Howard, I know it's been a tough 2 weeks for the entire community. It's been hurtful for a lot of people. The UOS, the people who work there, our 40 staff who are caught up, many of them in the middle of this and have to deal with this all day. Our rabbis in our shuls who are having to fend off questions and that from people every day. You, the community, who are extremely frustrated. I have to say that whilst the meeting that took place wasn't a UOS meeting, nonetheless, I do feel as a UOS, we feel we want to apologize to the South African Jewish community. We feel that, it's crucial that we deliver on the mandate that you have trusted us with. And therefore, when you say you're challenging me with this and challenging the board, I say back to you, challenge accepted. We need to resolve all of this. We need to make a better community. We have a brilliant community, by the way, as I started off earlier on, just with our schools and our shuls and our rabbis and our mikvahs and every single thing we have, in my view, is really outstanding. We cannot let 2 weeks derail that. And we need to make sure that between everyone in our community, there's shalom, there's peace, and that's the challenge. So I say to you, challenge accepted. We will work very hard on all of the challenges you've thrown at us tonight, from service to transparency to every single question Peta has put to us, and close it on that basis, that we will accept that challenge and do our best to deliver to the community.
Thank you. Chief Rabbi, I know you wanted to say something. I see a number of people in the chat thinks that after having said that, for wanting a better community and a better Jewish community in South Africa, I should apologize to you. Do you think I need to apologize to you?
Howard, you and I go back for too long, but it's always, I'd love to see you apologize, you never.
I'd love to see both of you apologize. It would warm my heart.
But you know what? I think, Howie, you and I, we've debated many issues over the years, and we often agree to disagree on things, and I think that's also okay. I think what's been amazing about tonight is that we've had 2 hours, and we basically said to the community, look, I should tell you, I'm up way past my bedtime. Okay, I just have to let you all know, and people should be very grateful. I'm looking at my watch, thinking, goodness, this is so late. But we've given 2 hours, and we're ready to answer, and we've answered everything to the best of our ability. I think Peta's done an amazing job of asking all of the tough questions, and I think that's actually the most important thing. This is about strengthening our community and doing that through a process of accountability and answering all the community's questions and then growing together as a community. I'm not going to get into the issue that you raised because Peta and I discussed it on numerous occasions. Anything further would just be repetitious. But I want to thank you, Howard, and I want to thank you, Peta, for this opportunity to be grilled, and this opportunity to face all of your questions and all of the questions of the community, because the truth is, the more we can talk about the issues, the better it's going to be for everybody, including ourselves. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to be with you all, and I'm looking forward to climbing into bed.
With that, we want to thank everyone who's joined us this evening. We've had thousands and thousands of people at Zoom. We've had way over 1,000, maybe 1,500 people have managed to get into our Zoom room, many more thousands on YouTube. We really appreciate the fact that you all stayed up so late with us this evening in order that we can try and resolve this matter for our entire community. We will see you, I'm sure, with a webinar later in the week. We're planning something special on the American elections. We'll let you know over the next few days exactly about it. We're going to leave the chat open for the next 5 minutes or so. So please, we'd love you to leave a comment in the chat section. We'd really want to know what you think, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on Zoom. We think it's important that you genuinely have a voice. So please post a comment, and I can guarantee you all your comments will be shared with all the participants, because they really need to get a sense of what our community is feeling, both positive, negative, but let's more importantly, let's build something better together. So with that, good night to you all. Thank you for joining us. If you are on YouTube, please remember, please subscribe and like. That really helps us. And it has really been such a great pleasure to have brought you the 60th webinar of Lockdown from the South African Jewish Report. Good night to you all.
Thank you, Howard.